All right, so what's going on, guys? So in today's video, we're actually going to take a little bit of a break from what we were doing with the engine. Of course, if you saw my last video, you know we took the head off. We're really just prepping everything to come out of the car. If you're not familiar with the way that I do it, currently is I'm actually going to be dropping the engine down, getting onto a dolly, and then pulling it out from underneath the car. I'm not going to use a cherry picker or anything like that. I found that this way works, and of course you don't have to have that extra expense of buying like an engine hoist, and you don't have to worry about storing anything like that. You can just buy one of these $10 dollies. But with that said, I have to make sure I have enough clearance to pull the engine from underneath the car. Now, of course, with the head off, that's going to make it a lot easier, but I'm going to go ahead and pull the bumper off and the intercooler and everything like that. But while it's off, I've decided to go ahead and modify my bumper and paint my intercooler. So I figured this is a good time as any to get that done. So you guys stay tuned for that. But of course, I have to say it, if you haven't already, make sure you hit that subscribe button to follow the build of my Galant and my Integra and everything else that we've got going on. So go ahead and hit that subscribe button, hit that like button. Without much further ado, let's get to it. All right, guys, so like I mentioned, I'm going to be removing the intercooler and the crash bar from the car for two reasons. Of course, it'll give me more space to pull the engine out. I don't want to damage the intercooler in the process, and I will be painting it in this video. To remove the crash bar, it's going to have two bolts that are up under here. I'll show you guys that when we get to it. And of course, my intercooler is held on with this bracket here. As I mentioned, this bracket actually came from an old Punishment Racing kit for the DSM. So you probably can't get that anymore. But of course, mounting an intercooler is really simple anyway. This just made it easy to be able to set it over top of the original crash bar and then bolt it in, which I have it bolted in over here. So I'll go ahead and remove the 4 bolts that are holding the crash bar in and then pull the entire thing out. Now, it doesn't make a difference if you have the original crash bar or not. This is pretty much the same thing. I just cut off the middle of the crash bar and then put these 2 bars in the front to offer some support. Alright guys, so to remove the crash bar, you actually have 2 bolts on each side. They are 14 millimeters. So if you're looking at the frame here, they're actually on the bottom in these 2 holes. And they're just these little short bolts. And so you guys get a better idea of where those bolts are if you're not familiar. So obviously this is going to be your front of your crash bar. They're going to be on the bottom of this rail right here. And it is the same thing on the other side. Now of course, if this was a stock setup, you could just pull the crash bar out and then you'd be done. But of course I have to remove my intercooler as well. So now I'm just going to unbolt it. And then when I pull the whole thing out, I'll go ahead and slide the intercooler out as well. Now for this, I have used these hex head bolts. These have a 5 millimeter head on them. And I actually want to show you guys something else. If you notice, that came off pretty easily and there's no nut, or there wasn't a nut on the back of it. All right, so like I said, from there, we can just pull this thing out. And it just slides right out. So we can just slide this out. So this is all your crash bar really is. Again, I have modified mine, but you can see these 2 rails on the outside that slot into these holes here on both sides. That's really all to it. Alright guys, so with the crash bar removed, you can see how I secure that bar to the top of the crash bar. And that's just with these riv nuts. What this is you basically drill a hole. You can put a threaded insert into your metal or whatever it is that you're working with. And then it presses the back of this so that this is secured in here. It shouldn't go anywhere. These things are great. Since I've actually picked one up, I've used it several places in the car. I've actually used it to mount my master cylinder reservoir. Whereas before I just had some self-tapping screws. I've put riv nuts on that so now I can remove that if I need to. I did use them on the front bumper as well to mount the license plate. So now I'm going to prep the intercooler for paint. For that, I'm just going to use a little bit of acetone and a rag and wipe it down. I'm not going to do a whole lot with this just because it doesn't have to be perfect. But I do want to wipe it down just so it's not too ugly. So what you notice is I'm only going to mess with the intakes. I'm not obviously going to try to clean the fins because that's just going to bend them. And you want to try to keep them as straight as possible to maintain the effectiveness of the intercooler. And that's all we're going to do. So now I'm just going to take this Scotch-Brite pad and scuff these up. And you don't need to do much. And then we're ready to spray. Alright guys, so I do got some cheapo spray paint. It is gloss black. I don't think it's going to make much of a difference because for the most part, on the fins, it's going to be really light anyway. So the intakes is the only thing that's going to get a good coating. I would prefer a flat or matte black but this is all they had. So this is actually really simple. You don't have to be perfect. The big thing is over the fins, you want to do a very light dusting. You only want to put enough coating to cover it because you don't want the paint to like pool up inside of the fins. So I'll get the intakes first. So I'll probably just do that a couple more times and then we'll be done. All right, guys, so it's been a few minutes. All right, so you can see I went a bit heavier on the intakes with the second coat. Still keeping it pretty light. All right, so I think it's looking pretty good. It's been a few more minutes. One more coat should do it. All right, so I did go a little bit heavier on that coat. It looks pretty good. I'll let this dry. I do have a little bit more paint left. So we'll see what this looks like when it's all done, but I think that will work. So like I talked about, I just used those riv nuts to replace that huge license plate bracket. You can see where the outline of it was. And this way the license plate fastens directly to the bumper. Now fortunately it does cover up all these holes that was left by that little bracket. And this makes it look a little bit better. That's how we have to have front license plates here in VA. So what I think I'm going to do, because I don't want to just hack this up. I feel like a lot of people do that, and in my opinion, it looks really bad. I'm going to try to keep this curve in here, at least as best as possible, while taking this up probably another inch or so, maybe right below here. But I want to keep that curve in there. So I think the best way to do that is to make a template with this painter's tape, and then kind of maintain that curve. You can kind of see what I'm going for there. I want to be able to maintain the curve. So I think that's more or less what I'm looking for. I'm going to reinforce this a little bit. And then I should be able to just pull this back off. And then I should be able to put this right here below, right below this one. All right, guys, so you kind of get the idea of what I'm going for. Now I'm going to take these screws out just so I can have it flat up against here. But I'm going to be cutting right here below this line. And I think I'm actually going to move this in a little bit so it more closely follows this here, kind of coming in at an angle. So I'll play with this a little bit to figure out how I'm going to do it before I start any cutting. All right, guys, so just a couple minutes later, I think I've got a pretty good idea of how I want to do this. All I did was just tear the tape in here and slide it over so it is still slightly tapered. It'll open it up quite a bit. You're looking at about 2 inches of space here while keeping some of that original curve. And I think this is also a good opportunity for me to use a tool that I've had for a while but haven't had a reason to use, and that's this thing here. So of course you can cut this bumper with a razor blade. I've used like a cutoff tool with a cutoff like a metal wheel, a bunch of things. It's pretty easy to cut, but I feel like this may give me the control and the kind of precision I'm looking for. So we're gonna find out here in a second. I've never used this thing. Oh yeah, this should be pretty quick. See how it does with the corners. Just like that. That took a minute. All right, guys, so for a rough cut, I think that looks really good. And you can see just moving the 2 inches made a huge difference. This thing's gonna look really aggressive. Now we'll have to go back in with some coarse grit sandpaper and clean up some of these edges, but there's not a lot here. This thing was definitely easy to control, and it made quick work of this bumper. Now I need to figure out something or a solution to securing the bottom of the original bumper to this lip, because it doesn't want to stay together. But that's really more of an aesthetic thing, and then I can trim this off here. I think this is going to change the look of the car dramatically. It's almost a shame that I painted it black. But that is a benefit of having that style of intercooler, is I can just flip it over if I decide I want to, you know, kind of show its teeth a little bit more. Like, so in case you're wondering what this is just a oscillating multi-tool. The DeWalt part number is a DCS355. So if you're interested, you know, check it out. All right, so now that I got everything smoothed up, I'm gonna go ahead and remove the tape. Now, of course, I'll have to probably get in here with some sandpaper by hand and finish this thing up. Especially around the corners. But I think for the, you know, 5 minutes that just took me, that came out really good. You can see it made a huge difference. I mean, this opening is huge now. All right, guys, so I went ahead and threw the bumper back on the car. Right now, it's not bolted in, so it's not quite even. But so far, it's looking really good. Like, it's amazing how much of a difference that little modification really made, because we really didn't cut that much off. But I'm going to let you guys go ahead and check it out. Look at that, guys. That looks mean. Now, of course, this is something I had thought about doing for a while, but it was one of you guys, literally one person, who just agreed with the idea, who kind of made me go ahead and do this. And I love the way that looks. Like, it does look super aggressive with that big mouth. I know it's going to look even better once the front bumper and the lip is painted. I did put 2 little self-tapping screws in here just to hold the inner part of the bumper to the lip, because that was really bothering me. It's not too noticeable, but that is just temporary for now until I figure something else out. But aside from that, the black intercooler with the bigger mouth was definitely the right call. Like, you can actually see part of the crash bar that I made, which I really like. So what do you guys think? Personally, I think that looks really good, but I am curious to see what it looks like on the silver side. So let's go ahead and check that out. All right, so what do you guys like better, option 1 or 2? I do like this. I think I really need to see the car on the ground and with everything tightened up, because like I said earlier, the bumper just kind of sitting on here, so it's not quite level. But that looks really good too. All right, so which side do you guys think looks better? I'm kind of torn at this point because they both look really good, but I think, at least for now, I'm going to go ahead and go with the more stealthy option, go on the black side, just because to keep this thing a little more low-key, at least until it's making some real power. I've already had some issues just when I was out and about tuning during the daytime. Had a couple of races they want to try you. And I think having an even more exposed front mount is just going to attract a lot more attention, and I'd really rather not deal with that. So I think I'm going to go with the low-key option, at least for now. But we'll see how that goes. But anyway, I want to thank you guys for watching my video. If you haven't already, make sure you hit that like button, that thumbs up button. Have a great day.